The 1980s gave us some of the most iconic comedies of all time, but not every gem got its time in the spotlight. While everyone remembers Ghostbusters and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, there are a few hilarious flicks from the decade that didn't get the recognition they deserved. Here are 10 underrated comedy movies from the 80s that are worth revisiting. Get Crazy took the chaos of a New Year's Eve concert and turned it up to 11, giving us the ultimate 80s rock and roll fever dream. Featuring a cast of wild characters, including a manager who's one step away from a nervous breakdown and a drugged-out Mick Jagger wannabe, this movie captured the era's love for excess and eccentricity. It might not have shattered box office records, but with its offbeat humor and cameos from real-life rock legends, it's still a cult classic for anyone who thinks the 80s peaked with neon lights and loud guitars. The Burbs delivered the suburban nightmare we all secretly fear. The weird neighbors are probably up to something sinister, and yes, you should absolutely spy on them. With Tom Hanks leading the charge, this dark comedy cost about $18 million, making us all rethink moving to the Burbs back in 1989. It's still a cult classic, reminding us that sometimes it's the quiet streets that hold the darkest secrets.
Ray, do you want him to take your family, kidnap them, tear their livers out, and make some kind of satanic pate? We found Walter!
We got a real problem.
My science project dared to ask, what if your homework opened a portal to other dimensions? And then answered with a time-warping, effects-laden adventure straight out of a teenager's wildest dreams. This film perfectly encapsulates the 1980s obsession with sci-fi and coming-of-age tales, mashing them together in a way only that decade could. Sure, it flew under the radar compared to some of its bigger budget contemporaries, but its blend of goofy humor and genuine excitement still makes it a nostalgic trip worth taking. Summer School gave us the ultimate slacker fantasy. A gym teacher, played by Mark Harmon, forced to teach summer school when he'd rather be surfing. It was made on a modest $7 million budget, perfectly capturing the laid-back, carefree vibe of the late 80s. And it's still giving us major nostalgia for those days when the biggest worry was passing remedial English.
You know what we need? Besides bread, we need a woman to appreciate what we have to offer.
The Heavenly Kid gave us the Afterlife's version of a high school mentorship program where a 50s greaser returns as a ghost to help a nerdy 80s teen get his life together. The film is a quintessential slice of 80s fantasy, blending a bit of Back to the Future with a healthy dose of feel-good charm. It may not have reached the same iconic status as other time travel flicks, but with its catchy soundtrack and heartwarming message, it's still the kind of movie that makes you believe everyone deserves a second chance, even if you have to come back from the dead to get it. Real Genius gave us a campus full of geniuses who would rather play pranks and invent lasers than study, and we loved every minute of it. Made for $8 million, this film not only launched Val Kilmer's career, but also gave us a glimpse into what the 80s thought a college for whiz kids should look like, part frat house, part science fair. Decades later, it's still the go-to movie for anyone who ever dreamed of hacking the system, literally and figuratively. The great outdoors reminded us that family vacations can be a nightmare, especially when you're stuck with Dan Aykroyd and a bear with a vendetta. This film gave us the iconic scene of John Candy facing off with a giant steak, which is still referenced by anyone who's ever tried to finish a meal too big for their stomach. And let's not forget the boat chase scene, proving that even in the late 80s, comedy could still be an adrenaline rush in flannel shirts. Johnny dangerously spoofed the gangster genre with Michael Keaton, proving that crime does pay, at least in laughs. This cult classic is packed with rapid-fire jokes and absurd situations, like a killer parrot and a crime boss who never learned to swear properly. The film's sly wit and old-school charm have kept it alive in the hearts of fans who know that Johnny Dangerously is more than just an underrated gem. It's a comedy that makes you long for the days when gangsters were this hilarious. The Man with One Red Shoe introduced us to Tom Hanks as an oblivious concert pianist caught in a CIA plot because of, you guessed it, his mismatched footwear. This quirky comedy is based on a French film, but it adds that distinctly 80s American flair, complete with Cold War paranoia and absurd misunderstandings. While it wasn't Hanks's biggest hit, the movie has since become a nostalgic favorite, reminding us of a time when a single shoe could cause a national security crisis. Just one of the guys had every teen's dream and nightmare rolled into one, going undercover as the opposite sex to prove a point. The film was shot on a budget of about $8.5 million, making it a relatively small but memorable flick in the crowded field of 80s teen comedies. It is also one of the few movies that dared to tackle gender issues while still managing to deliver some classic 80s humor.